And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Football Friday. It is now the first day in December, December 1st. I can't believe it. Time, as I always say, time just continues to go fast. But yeah, we're now in December. We got a lot to talk about on this Football Friday today. Before I get into what we're going to talk about, I just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the bottom of the ticker of the show segment down below. So let's get right into what we are going to talk about. So we'll recap last night's game between the Cowboys and the Seahawks, a very high-scoring game, so we'll get into that. We'll get into the early window matchups for Week 13 in the NFL. We'll also talk about the big college football matchups this weekend as well. Obviously, tonight we have Washington and Oregon, so we'll talk about that. In the final part, the second part of the show, skipped over that. That'll be the third part of the show. The second part of the show will actually preview the NFC Championship game rematch between the 49ers and the Eagles. Then in the third part of the show, we will talk about the early window matchups and the big college football games this weekend. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about the late window games for Week 13, the rest of the late window games, including, of course, the Sunday night matchup. So that will be that'll be the show for today. So let's get right into the first topic, which is discussing last night's game between the Cowboys and the Seahawks. So, like I said yesterday, I'm taking the Cowboys to win and cover. I don't care what happens. I'm not going against it. And the Seahawks ended up covering the spread. I also went against DK Metcalf in a couple of leagues, and my week in those leagues are not off to a good start. So hopefully, my team puts it together and is able to come back. Because in one of my leagues, I'm already down 83-0 because I was going against someone that had Dak Prescott, DK Metcalf, and Brandon Cooks, and all those guys had good games last night, including Brandon Cooks, who had a touchdown. So it's not great. Not great. The Seahawks ended up covering and the Cowboys won. So I really just did not, benefit from this game last night. However, it was a very entertaining game. There was actually no punts in this game at all. Teams would turn it over on downs. Actually, there was an Instagram post. I took a screenshot of it if I can just find it. Yeah, so NFL posted. So the game last night joined 4 other games that had no punts in them. So you had Week 2 in 1992, the Bills and the 49ers. There was no punts in that game. The Packers and the Bears, Week 4 of 2014. Also, that same season, the Packers and the Saints, Week 8 of 2014. The Chiefs and the Eagles from 2021, that was Week 4. And then, of course, you have last night's game between the Seahawks and the Cowboys. This game got off to a fast start. Geno Smith, no. The Cowboys had the ball. They went 14 plays, 63 yards, almost 6 minutes of time of possession. Down the field, they kicked a field goal from 30 yards out, Brandon Aubrey. Then, on the Seahawks' first drive of the game, Geno Smith connected with DK Metcalf for 73 yards on a 3rd and 8. And that put the Seahawks up 7-3. Then after that, the Cowboys answered with a touchdown of their own to put them up 10-7. Seahawks missed a field goal. Cowboys then went down the field and scored a touchdown. That was to Brandon Cooks from 7 yards out. So it kind of looked like, the Cowboys at that point were just going to run away with it. But that was not the case. In the second quarter, Seahawks answered with a touchdown to make it 17-14. Zach Charbonnet scored his first NFL touchdown. That was at the goal line. Cowboys answered with a field goal. And then towards the end of the first half, the Seahawks got a touchdown. They went 8 plays, 75 yards. Geno Smith connected with DK Metcalf from 1 yard out. So that put them up 21-20 at the half. Then, to open the second half, Geno Smith scored a rushing touchdown from 5 yards out. They went 10 plays, 75 yards to put themselves up 28-20. Cowboys then answered with a touchdown of their own. They didn't go for two. They kicked the extra point. Tony Pollard scored a touchdown from 6 yards out. Geno Smith then threw a pick. Cowboys then turned it over on downs, and then the Seahawks went 5 plays, 70 yards. DK Metcalf scored another touchdown. So he just had, out of nowhere, he just had a monster game. And, of course, it had to be the week where I played him in a couple of leagues. Cowboys answered with a field goal to go down 35-30. Seahawks turned it over on downs. Cowboys scored a touchdown to put them up 38-35. Dak Prescott connected with Jake Ferguson for a 12-yard touchdown. They went for two and got it. Brandon Cooks caught the 2-point conversion. Seahawks turned it over on downs. Cowboys kicked a field goal to put them up 41-35. And then the Seahawks turned it over on downs. The very last play, Micah Parsons came unblocked, and Geno Smith just threw it into the ground. And that was the game. Cowboys win 41-35. This is the first game that they did not cover at home this season. And, of course, I was 1 week early by picking the Commanders. I should have waited another week, but I did not do that. So looking at the stats for the game, Geno Smith had a very good game, 23 of 41, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns. The interception was really his only mistake. Zach Charbonnet made some plays last night. He ran the ball for 60 yards, had a touchdown. Geno Smith also had a rushing touchdown in this game. DK Metcalf, a monster game, 6 receptions, 134 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 7 receptions for 62 yards. Tyler Lockett had 5 for 47. And then on the other side for the Cowboys, Dak Prescott had a great game as well. 29 of 41, 299 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Tony Pollard had 68 yards on the ground and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb, of course, was our leading receiver. 12 receptions, 116 yards, and a touchdown. Jake Ferguson had 6 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. And Brandon Cooks had 4 for 45 and a touchdown. Cowboys improved to 9-3 on the season, and the Seahawks dropped to 6-6, which that was a big loss for them. And now they play San Francisco again. There's a lot to unpack from this game. A lot of penalties last night. The Cowboys, I thought at one point were going to lose this game. Their defense did not play well at all last night. Again, no punts last night. They did get the interception, of course. Deron Bland was getting burnt all game long. DK Metcalf, again, had a monster game. I wish this happened any other week, but of course, when I'm playing him, he decides to go off. But yeah, the defense, they couldn't get any pressure really on Geno Smith. No sacks last night. They gave up a lot of big plays. And the penalties, like I said, those were my takeaways from, some of my takeaways at least. The offense, Dak Prescott played great. He was not, if they lost the game, it was not going to be because of him. It was going to be because of the defense. That's something going forward that I would be concerned about as a Cowboys fan, which I am not. Because, this team, they finally go up against a team with a winning record. And Geno Smith, he carved them up. They couldn't cover DK Metcalf. And, this is why people don't take the Cowboys seriously. Is because, they've been blowing people out at home, and then you got the Seahawks who are coming in, who right now are in a playoff spot, and they could have beat you. Now, what I will say is Dak Prescott made sure that didn't happen because he played a great game again last night. We talked about the MVP odds yesterday. This only, increases his odds to win MVP right now, Dak Prescott. Again, no turnovers. Another efficient game. The offense continues to roll. So that's the positive. But the negative is the defense. Because if you're going up now against Philly, which I think they do play each other next week in Dallas. And then, of course, if you got a matchup against the 49ers again, yeah, I mean, the defense, are they going to be able to, get the job done? Now, I'm going to be honest. I mean, I think the game next week against Philly should be a pick 'em, because Dallas plays great at home, and they almost beat Philly. So, I mean, we'll see, what the line is, after this week. But the defense is definitely a concern. As for Seattle, I mean, that was a huge loss. And especially because now if the Rams win, the Rams have the tiebreaker over Seattle. They could jump over them. You got the Packers. They got a big game against the Chiefs. So if they win, it's not looking good for Seattle right now. And now you got San Francisco coming up. So and you just played them. And it's unfortunate because they did play a good game. Like I said, Geno Smith, he was good last night when he had time to throw. He was able to make his throws, and obviously DK Metcalf had a monster game. It's just that was a huge loss. I honestly thought Seattle was going to win at one point, but you know what? Give the Cowboys credit. They didn't back down, and they get the win. So they are now 9-3 on the season. They still have they're in sole possession of that top wild card spot as of right now, but obviously they have bigger aspirations. They're trying to catch up to the Eagles now, and they're going to have an opportunity. If the Eagles lose, that makes the game even bigger next week when they play each other in Dallas. So, and that should be a great game. The first time these two teams played, it was a great game, so I expect another one as well. But listen, I've been a Dak Prescott, doubter, but I feel like right now he's playing his best football of his career. I mean, I think it's safe to say that. I know some of the opponents you could say, well, of course he would be, but you know what? I even last night, because Cowboys have lost games like that, where they played inferior competition and then they go up against a team that, we'll see how they, match up against them, and they lose, and they won that game, and Dak Prescott didn't turn the ball over. Now, obviously, we got to see them beat Philadelphia, got to see them beat San Francisco. Then I'll really take them seriously. But right now, I'm still, I'm not buying in yet. This team is a very good team, and this team definitely could go to the Super Bowl. But again, I'll believe it when I see it. But Dak Prescott is playing his best football of his career. He is definitely a better quarterback than he was, his rookie season, his first couple of years. Because now you're not relying on Ezekiel Elliott anymore. It's now your team, and they got a lot of weapons. I mean, they seem to always find the tight end. I mean, you had Jason Witten, his first couple of years. Then it looked like Blake Jarwin was going to be the guy. Then it was Dalton Schultz for a couple of years. And now you got Jake Ferguson, who's been playing well. And Brandon Cooks, he's been playing well, recently. CeeDee Lamb is obviously one of the best receivers in the NFL. I mean, he can throw him the ball, and that's what they've been doing. And he's been producing. Although he did have that drop on 4th and 1, which I don't know how he dropped it, but he did. I think it was on 4th and 1. It was on one of the possessions where they turned it over on downs. I forget, I think it was 4th and 1. But this is a good team. But I will say my concern with them is their defense. Especially after last night, because again, you go up against these better teams, besides Seattle. I mean, it's going to be a problem. They couldn't get any pressure on Geno Smith. Now, if you don't get any pressure on Brock Purdy or Jalen Hurts, it's going to be tough. But yeah, that's pretty much it with the first segment. So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about, speaking of Jalen Hurts, we're going to talk about the NFC Championship game rematch between the Eagles and the 49ers. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.